Hello. I think I'll kick off now. It's good to see some familiar faces on there. So yeah, hi Elliot. Kicking off the crowd, got interaction there, which is great. And Claire and Brian and others as well. Just to name a few there. Um, and yeah, for those that don't know me, I'm Sam. I head up the account management team here at Futrli. I've been here for a couple of years now. And yeah, I've been doing these webinars now kind of since lockdown began, and just continuing them because they seem to be kind of going and achieving good success. So certainly do give your feedback on how you think the kind of content was delivered, or what content you want delivered. We can certainly kind of mold those discussions to it. And today is a slightly different one than we've done before. This is around how you can collaborate, so all around kind of getting other users involved, and so forth. So we've got the full hour booked out, but as always, we don't need the full hour. Probably certainly with this topic, because it's nothing too complex. It's just around how to invite people and how to share things and organize our Futrli account in a nice kind of tidy fashion. Nothing worse than just having boards everywhere and people sign into various things. So it's about keeping it kind of good and concise, and then that just makes it much more efficient and scalable when you're working through it. So yeah, might not need the full hour, is what I'm trying to get at. Certainly drop in any questions that you have during today's session. Just whack it in the Q&A. I'll probably come to them at the end of the session. And I will send the recording of today, so you have everything at your fingertips, as well as maybe some help articles that I think might be useful for you guys. Cool. So firstly, I will share my screen and we'll jump into it. Cool. So hopefully everyone can see this. And what we're going to need to first do is, when you collaborate on Futrli, is to invite in a user. So obviously you can collaborate externally, but so this is all about how we can get another user involved, and that could be a client or a colleague. Probably be focusing on the colleague element, but we'll also look at how we can share work to a client. And we're going to go into the users here. That's where we can then connect up a user. So if you've got users already added in, you'll see a list of them all in here. It's probably worthy to note at this point to have a kind of a think, I suppose, about how you're going to approach who gets access to the account. So thinking about like cloud champions and so forth. So I talked about this on a previous webinar, that the idea of a cloud champion is good, but I think it is great when we have like a cloud champion team, so people wearing different hats for the kind of cloud offering that you create. Otherwise, if you've got too much emphasis on one person, then we might not get as much success because that person might be away or leave or whatever. So it's good to spread the load, as it were, and then have people of various levels doing various tasks. So you might want to invite some of your team in. There might be just simply kind of copying templates that you pre-built, for example, if you're the kind of person delivering the reports, or more of a senior team member. Or you might invite in other colleagues which are looking at specific clients and at a different sort of level. So have a think about how to kind of get the whole team involved, I suppose, because collaborating is great. We need to ensure that we're collaborating with the right people in the right way. So I think it was just worthy just to highlight that, to set up, like I said, a cloud team of some degree, and therefore you can use the privileges that are within Futrli, that we'll come on to in a sec, the different user types, to give people different roles and that sort of thing. So once we've kind of had that bit of a planning session kind of done in-house, we can then go in and add some users. Quickly add user. We've then got these user settings here. So here we then put in your name. So let's put in my name, for example. I can't add myself because I'm already a user, but we'll just do it for the sake of part-time submitting the field. We've then got a regular and we've got an admin user. So a regular user is intended for a client, really, so it's somewhat restricted access. An admin user is intended for a colleague. You can see that they both got abilities to do kind of various things, of which the bullet points highlight them. But one of the main differences between the two is that an admin can see the forecasting button. So if you invite a client in, you might want them just to view the report that you built out, not to edit the forecast if you built one at all. So therefore, if you invite them as a regular user, they'll see all the icons, but they won't see the forecasting one. So it's quite a good one for that case. When you're inviting in a client as well, you might not want to add the demo organizations. You're probably going to want to tick that if you're inviting in a admin, so a colleague. That means they can then kind of play around with the demo organizations that are in there. And then when you're adding in a user, you can give them particular organizations. So you can just give them, for example, Apple. If Apple's in your portfolio, then you must be doing something pretty good. I am, that's why I've got them. But you can just simply add what I'm saying is client by client, or you can use the add remove all organizations. So you can, maybe for a colleague, if you've got a senior member of the team that's getting involved with majority of stuff, you can have them to be all added. So you can just quickly do that. You can also use the auto add option. You would do this if you want that user to be automatically updated, their list to be updated with the new organizations that are added and taken away. So say, for example, you connect up another client. If you enable the auto add, that means that that user will have that client added to their list. So if you're adding in a client, then you probably don't want auto add. You're probably just going to want that one particular company. So these functions are mainly for a colleague. So enable auto add, they'll get organizations added whenever you add another one. Demo organizations added, they're getting all the orgs. This person might be more of a senior team member, one that can see everything and do all the work that you need to, but certainly just adjust it for whoever you're working with. Then click continue. You can then go to share boards with them. At this stage, we're just sharing a copy. So we'll come on to how we can share boards. You can effectively share it as a live option, so it'll update if you update it, or as a copy. So this is what this option does if you share it as a copy. So if you're inviting in a client, if you're inviting in a colleague rather, and you've built out a report that you want to share with them, and if you update the board, theirs will update. If you want that to happen, don't share anything at this stage, because this is just going to send exactly the same at the current stage, but if you then update yours, theirs doesn't update. So as it says up there, it's just doing it as a copy. And then you click continue once you're happy with what you've shared with them, if anything at all. This is just a pre-built set of text, but you can then just amend it to add in whatever you want to. So you can tailor make them, but most people kind of tend to just leave them as they are, and then hit send invite. That will then send, and you'll then see underneath your, if I go back, underneath your users here, it'll be kind of invitation pending. That invitation, I think, is active for about a week or so you can resend it in there. Once they've accepted it, they'll then appear in your either regular or admin list, which will be like a little table that you'll probably see on your account if you've got other users in there. So yeah, certainly you can be quite secure as to who you're collaborating with. So you've got different user types. We've got different companies they can see, different reports you can share with them. Certainly you can collaborate with whoever you want to and set the settings accordingly. Once you've then invited in a user, you can then start kind of working with them. So if we go to the boards, let's go to a board that we might have built out for a client. So I'm just going to go to one of these templates in here. I'm going to use, what shall I use? The COVID-19 planning for now. Cool. So say we've built this board out for a client or a colleague, and we want to share it with that user now. We can then click on share. So here we've got these two options. We've got share boards, we've got send a copy. So if we go to share boards, this will mean it's going to share it as a live option. So therefore that effectively means if I update this board, that other user's board updates as well. So generally you're going to want that when you're working with a colleague, because if you're working on the same board, you might want kind of that to happen for it to be always updating if you update it. Alternatively, you can send it as a copy, which you can change it to by clicking on that little hyperlink. That then sends it exactly the same as it is now, but it'll just be an independent copy. So if you update yours on your login, theirs doesn't update. You can also send them as a read-only as well. So that means then they can't technically edit it. They won't have the little cog wheel here. So it's quite good using that option if you're maybe sending it to a client. So when you're sending it, certainly it's worth to think if you want it as a live or as a copy version. Live is great because it updates, like I said, but you might want them to be independent because you might want to send a copy to a client and you to then kind of work on it if there are any amendments, and then you can then kind of replace it with a new copy. But you've got those options really to have a think about in which way you want to structure it. If you then send it as a live, you'll see next to your board, there'll be like a little live option, well, not live option, live tag rather. It will say live, so it will tell you that you are working on a live board, and therefore someone else can see the same work if you update it. So that's then kind of board sharing. There's not much to it other than just kind of hitting share and then selecting the right person to share it with. Then you might want to, as you're collaborating with different people, set up your folders in your boards so you can kind of organize it nicely. You see I've got a few up here, and I've then got kind of an untidy list of boards down here. So we might want to then create some folders just to organize our account. So if we click on new folder, we can then give it a name here. So let's give it a name and let's call this COVID strategies maybe. Cool. That appears there. We can then drag and drop a board into that folder, such as that. If you then also create a folder like this and you now want to share that folder with another user, we can then share it rather than doing them individually. You can share it here. Oh, I'll go back by clicking on the three dots, not the arrow, and then click share. That'll then share that folder with the particular user you stipulate. However, sharing it from this way will share the folder as a copy. So they'll have the folder in their account. It'll be exactly the same, like I said. But if you then go in and update your board, theirs won't update. So yeah, it works nicely if you're sharing templates, for example, like these ones, the ones which kind of come with your account if they've been put in by your account manager. You can share them because they're not necessarily going to be edited. They're the kind of hard copies that we've built, and you can then amend them accordingly. So you can share them there. But if you're working on, like, let's say you've built a folder for a name of a client, and you're both working on the same client, you probably want to share them individually. So you come into the board, click share boards, and share them as live, and then that user, upon accepting those into their account, will just have to put it into a folder themselves. So yeah, have a little think, but certainly put them into folders like I've done here. Just makes it a lot cleaner, rather than just having a big old list of loads of ones that might be saying new board, new board, new board, which is certainly not to my taste. I think it's great to have like an organised and efficient way of working, really, when you're working with a good number of clients. So yeah, folder management is key, and you can share and do things there. One other thing, actually, talking about kind of just having loads of test boards that you might have just accidentally clicked on new board, you can kind of mass delete them. So if you, sometimes if I've created a load of boards I want to delete, I can create a new folder, just call it delete. And you can then kind of drag and drop things into that folder, and then click on the three dots, and then click delete. So it's a bit quicker rather than going through each board individually and then clicking delete at the top right. You can just drag them into a folder and then delete the whole folder at once. Like that. That's a really good way. If you have got a kind of an untidy board, then you can then set it up in nice folders, shared correctly, and then you'll be kind of with a clean table to work from. So that's kind of the way that you can set up your boards and share them in live and copy versions. Another way to collaborate is also via the alerts. So with the alerts, you can set up to trigger for certain colleagues or even for your client, but it's kind of intended for your own team to be aware of anything that is that kind of pops up in their client's chart of accounts or any formal, and then you can then give them a call and be like, hey, I've seen this has happened. Are you okay? Do you want any support, sort of thing? It's a great way to get your foot in the door and start to position your services at a time of need. So if we go to add new and build an alert here, we can then set up one up. So let's go for real story productions. I'm going to maybe do, let's say, I'm going to do bank account. I'm going to put it to cumulative data because we're looking at a balance sheet item. I'm going to look at a running total. If this month it's maybe bad news, if we fall below, let's say 10,000. We can then see it populate down here, but here is where we can then choose who to be alerted. So you might want, for example, there could be one person in the firm that's just simply looking at their tasked with the alerts. They can be like the go-to person, because you can not choose someone to be alerted, and they could just then pop up in your Futrli account. However, that kind of requires you to be kind of in the Futrli account pretty much all the time, and even if you are, obviously there could be times when you're not in there. So an alert is obviously in essence a trigger for when that thing happens in real time. So the moment that happens, it's great if someone can be emailed with that notification, because you can then jump on it straight away if there is something to be jumped on, or you can just investigate the issue. So you could choose someone to have that role of managing the alerts. Alternatively, obviously you might have certain client managers for those particular client portfolios. So you can then just set up, or the individual user can, alerts for their own portfolio. And then you can then manage it independently. And I think it's good to have maybe 2 to 3 alerts or so, or 2 to 4 alerts per client, because that's a good number for you to then be able to track and understand what the client is going through. And you can certainly delete alerts and add new ones in, but certainly using the alerts to kind of add that collaboration is a really good tool. That's pretty much it from the kind of collaborating side of it. I've seen the question come through, but there isn't really much more to add. It's as straightforward as to simply adding in your users, sharing how you want to, folder management, and then ensuring that the correct people are set up with the alerts and so forth. So I think we'll just jump straight to the Q&A section. So certainly if you've got any questions, now's your chance. If you just want to whack them in the Q&A box, we can go through that. Cool. I see a question has come through from Elliot in the chat box just now, so let me just jump to that, because that's just right in front of me. So Futrli N0 integrate an alert can come up via Futrli for something going on. Data bank that is within Zero. Zero, we update daily, but Futrli, we only prepare reports monthly. Just going to reread that, Elliot. It's basically Futrli and Zero integrate an alert, come up via Futrli for something going on the bank that is within Zero. Yeah, correct. So obviously we sync with Zero, so what's in Zero will then be alerted in Futrli. Zero, we update daily, but Futrli, we only prepare reports monthly. Yeah, so that's probably a good indication as to setting up an alert might then trigger an opportunity when you might not have been in Futrli. So you've got the reports that you do monthly, which is great. But say, for example, you send them out on the 1st of the month, but then on the 14th of the month, when you're not in Futrli and you're just kind of updating Zero daily, which is great, something pops up that their debt has gone way too high, and we need to jump in and kind of investigate. What does that mean? Do we need to kind of help the client out with whatever that alert is triggered? So yeah, that's a good way to kind of help that. And like you mentioned there, that should help you get on the front foot. It's certainly about being proactive using those alerts, because it's just a way, once you've set it up, it'll just trigger every single day as it's just automatically synced, and it will trigger when that alert actually comes through. So cool. Certainly let me know how you get on with that, Elliot. That'd be interesting. Cool. So I've got a couple of questions. So Olivia has asked, how would I share an updated version, replace it with a new copy? So as in you've shared a copy and you then want to send a new one, I presume is the question. So with that, we just send a new one and the client can then delete the old one. Great. Or like I said, you just share it as a live, and then just obviously when you update it in real time, the clients will be updated. So you could maybe give the client an email to say they're done. That's one thing actually one of my clients does. They have all of their management accounts on Futrli and all set up as boards. and then they set it up so it's live, and when they are then completed and they've kind of all the bookkeeping's gone through and is all up to date, they'll just then drop the clients an email to be like, your management accounts are now officially wrapped up for the month, go in and take a look. So that's a good way of doing it. You can't turn the live on and off, unfortunately, Olivia. So yeah, maybe you can send a copy and then send another copy and ask the client to delete it. It's probably better though to just do the live version, and then yeah, if you're working on a particular time, maybe tell the client you're working through it. But yeah, I suppose if you're setting, however, if you're not amending the board either, and it's just looking at, let's say, the last calendar month, it's always going to be looking at that period. So that then gives you a bit of time. It's not going to be like if you update something in 0 now and it's looking at the last calendar month, that would affect necessarily the board, because it's just going to be looking at the last calendar month, if that makes sense, because we're the 1st of October, so they'd be looking at previous periods. So yeah, cool. I think we got there as I started to ramble on. So let me just get rid of those questions. Cool. And Martin just added, I think, to that, you can include a month name in the board title. That way, when it's updated, it's obvious. Yeah, fantastic. That's a good way of doing that. Perfect, there you go. And Brian says, I think, yeah, so Brian seemed to think that I wasn't making it clear that Futrli does sync daily, which it does. So yeah, thanks for that kind of reminder to make it clear to everyone that, yeah, certainly does sync daily automatically. So therefore, things like the alerts are really important and a great way of adding value, because you can just sit back and allow Futrli to just kind of tell you what's happening with your clients. And it syncs daily with both QuickBooks Online, Xero, and MYOB, if we've got any of our Australian friends on, which is kind of Australian and Australasia accounting package. That I've never actually looked at, but yeah, it's down there. But yeah, syncs daily, which is great. So you can just use those alerts to its fruition, and also the live dashboards and so forth. You could set up a board that's looking at the last 12 months, and it'll just be automatically updating all the time, looking at that period. And you can title it as Martin suggests, so the client is always up to speed with what they're exactly looking at. Cool. One of the questions that came through as well is around, should I give my client, am I able to give my client rather admin privileges? So yeah, effectively you can give them admin privileges. So I kind of say generally you'd give them regular access, because that means that it's somewhat restricted, so they can't edit forecasts and things, as that's what generally is best, where the accountant keeps control of the forecasting and keeps control of the more complex areas of Futrli. But you might have a client that's really knowledgeable, or rather kind of financially savvy, wants to be hands-on with the forecast and wants to build things out in tandem with yourself. So yeah, by all means, you can give them admin access as well. But yeah, it's just worthy to note that it's great if you can kind of remain control. So a client needs a forecasting need, they'll come to you as the accountant and say, I'm worried about this, or can we build this into the forecast? And then you can go away and kind of deliver that to the client, therefore keeping you very much in the loop. One other way, however, I've got other partners that do it, is that you might give a client admin access because they want to build the forecast, but then the accountant that I'm using here as an example kind of goes in and checks the forecast and kind of makes sure it's all as it should do. So they've kind of accounted for the things that you would be skilled at kind of adding in, like depreciation and that sort of thing, and making sure they've got that kind of done well. So you could use it that way as well. So yeah, certainly you can use admin for clients if you kind of think it's right. Like I said, just be aware that they then can potentially muck up forecasts, but I'm sure you give it to the right person. Cool. So that are all the questions that have come through. So yeah, thanks again to everyone for joining. I'll send you the recording, and I might send some information on users just so you've got it kind of in your minds as to how it works in the Help Center. Next session, let me just have a look at what that's on. We've got a couple more in this current series. Next one is on how to handle prices and packages. That should be a good one. Always interesting talking about pricing. So hopefully we should be able to share some good nuggets of knowledge there. And then the next one is going to be how to maximize your Futrli account. So that's going to be really interesting about how to make sure that you're aware of everything that is on offer, really, that we've got to support you, from account management support to different products to the support team. So that should be a good couple of sessions to attend. So let me know if you haven't got your name down, you've misplaced the link, and we'll get you all set up. Obviously, give me a shout if you've got any questions. Use the support team as well, support@futrli.com. But if not, I'll speak to you in a week or so's time. Thanks a lot. Cheers, everyone.